Hey gang, I'm going to talk today about the College Picric acid incident that happened back in 2005 when I was in fire prevention. I wanted, because this is one of our first video recordings, to include my face in the beginning so that you could see what I look like. Normally I have a fire-related hat on, but my hats were all dirty and my wife was washing them. So I thought I'd show you my cool Amgen tour hat. Um, I want to get going on this. It doesn't matter if you are in my fire prevention course, my hazmat course, my introduction to fire protection course, all of these courses. In fact, even wildland, in a sense, this story is one that applies to all of them and is a great example of why our diligence in training, our diligence in doing inspections and making sure we do them well, all of these things, our diligence in researching what we're dealing with and making sure we've done our due diligence. This is going to make a difference. You know, you're probably never going to get an award for preventing something. People get, medals of valor for saving babies from burning buildings, and these kind of things, jumping off the pier to save someone in the ocean and dragging them to safety. You get awards for those kind of things. But getting an award for preventing something, yeah, that doesn't happen. I didn't get an award, but I got a lot of news articles written about me. And I had a bunch of people trying to promote me for an award. Didn't happen because, again, you get awards for really flashy things, not what could have happened didn't happen. Okay, well, I'm going to switch to the PowerPoint, and I think I'll leave myself down in the corner. So if you don't mind. So this whole story starts actually way before the incident. I spent 4 years as a certified hazmat technician. The engine above was what I drove after I promoted to engineer, and I transferred over to the hazmat team at Fire Station 76. You can see their beautiful hazmat unit down here on the bottom. It was really cool. When I was there, they didn't have that one. It didn't come till just shortly after I transferred to another unit. But when I was there, I learned a lot about hazmat, and we got a lot of training. When you become a hazmat technician, you have to go through 4 week-long courses, 8-hour days, called Hazmat 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. And I did them all. And then if you want to be a specialist, you have to take F and G. So I was going to be a specialist, and then some things happened, changed things, and I ended up just staying there as a technician. The time I was there, we did training a lot. And hazmat is, it's a big deal, along with responsibilities of responding to hazmat incidents. We're involved in USAR, confined space rescue, swift water rescue, a lot of other things. So we got a lot of training. So there was this one training incident that we went to that, sometimes you learn stuff when you're in these training things, like they stick with you. Like one of them was we did recognizing drug labs. And in the process of that, my instructor, he gave us the recipe for how to make crystal meth. And I wrote it down, and I kept it in my pocket for the whole rest of my career. Just in case, I need to do a Breaking Bad thing, No, not really. I'm just kidding. But I did. I thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was kind of funny to have the recipe on how to make crystal meth in my pocket. So I literally did keep it in my pocket for the rest of my career. So, you learn all these funny things and interesting things, and also very scary things. So one of the training I went to was about explosives. And the instructor was kind of focusing on explosives that you don't expect to be explosives. Situations like ANFO, which we will talk a lot about in the hazmat class, but other products that can be very explosive, blevies, things of that nature. So he told the story about picric acid. Now, I'd never heard of it. Have you heard of it? Most people haven't. It's also known as trinitrophenol. That name might sound familiar to some of you. So he told the story of a teacher that found a pint of it. If I remember the story correctly, he was in Ohio, and he was going through the back stock, and he found an unmarked bottle of picric acid. And it kind of looked like this one here, but around the lid, it was all crystallized. And he was going to test it to see if he could figure out what it was, because it was unlabeled. When he turned the lid, this stuff is so shock sensitive. When he turned the lid, it exploded in his hands. It blew his hands off. It exploded the acid all over him. It was kind of a combination of dry and wet, quite crystallized, and glass shards all over him. The guy was really messed up. The way I remember the story is the guy lived, but just barely. And it's just, tragic. Blew his hand off, blinded him, and all of that. And he was just checking to see what it was, but he had no idea that it was so shock sensitive that turning the cap made it blow up. So then the instructor told us all about how picric acid is also known as trinitrophenol. And here's the thing. He said that in the 1980s, they started making a big effort to get him out of schools. This acid was used for experiments in the 50s and 60s in high school classrooms. And yet it had been a product that was used in bombs in World War I especially, and in World War II, and was used by even terrorists, things of this nature. It's bad stuff. If it's wet, it's basically an acid. It can be used for dyeing material. It can be used for etching metal. It can be used for, it can actually be used, go figure, an acid that helps you with burns. I don't know. They must kind of change it or something. That doesn't make sense to me, but I've read about that. So he told us all of these things, but he said that in spite of the fact that there's a big effort to get rid of it, there's still some here and there that you find in chemistry labs. So fast forward, and later on, I'm in fire prevention. Later on in my career, after I've been on the hazmat team, after I went and worked at some other places, almost like 10 years later, I'm working in fire prevention. And one of the places that I used to inspect was the Master's College. It was called back then. Now it's called Master's University. They've been upgraded. And this school would take me a whole day and a half to 2 days to inspect, because it's not a huge campus in the sense of big buildings, but it's very spread out. So the first year I did it, they had a bunch of buildings under construction, and one of them was an old building that was their science building that they were modernizing. So we barely even went in there. But here's what I remember. We did go in this one, it was like a dugout storage area that was all rock from way back. The school is a very old school. It used to be called LA Baptist College. So in there were boxes and boxes of chemicals. And I said, what the heck is this? And he goes, the chemistry department had to put all their chemicals in here while we're doing construction in the building over on the other side of campus. And I went, oh, okay. So all of this is just in a holding pattern until they get opened again. Yes. Okay, great. So then we went over to, we went through the whole school. Fast forward into that summer. I was asked to come and inspect the school. The science building was complete, and they wanted me to pass the alarms and the rest of the building and to sign them off for construction being completed. Well, when I went over there, we ran into the chemistry teacher. His name is Dr. Jones, and I was introduced to him, and we talked for a couple of minutes. And I said, Dr. Jones, I remember all your chemicals were over in that shed kind of thing, and now they're here, sitting here in boxes. What are your plans? And he goes, well, we're going to stock everything this summer for the upcoming school year. And I said, can I make some suggestions? And he said, sure, I'm open. I said, I think you should use a system like the Flynn Scientific categorization system. They had all these brand new cabinets, a flammable liquids cabinet, an acids cabinet, all of these things. And they had all the Gucci stuff, and they had really nice shelving, and they had even added the earthquake protection. The shelving had sliding doors on it and little rails so that things wouldn't fall out in case of earthquake. So I suggested, he mentioned that he had an intern that was going to do all the stocking during the summer. I said, well, two things. Why don't you use the Flynn system to organize them by hazard type? Secondly, why don't you make sure that your intern inventories everything so you know exactly what's here? And then I said, you got a lot of old stuff here. And if I was you, I would get maybe a hazmat cleanup team, a company, and have them come and take away all your old stuff that you don't use anymore. And he goes, that's a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. So, boom, done. Again, fast forward. Now, my second time inspecting them the next year, so now it's 2004, November is when I would usually inspect them. And I'm inspecting the school, and we spent all day, this re-science building where they have all their science classes, chemistry, biology, and every kind of science, is on the far end of their campus. So we had been inspecting all day long. I even ate lunch there. They treated me to lunch in the cafeteria. No, it wasn't a bribe. It was just, we were very on good terms, and they let me eat lunch with them there in the cafeteria. It was great. And then we went, we're going through the campus, and the day's almost over. It's like almost 5 o'clock. And there was kind of that, should we stop and come back tomorrow? And I said, you know what, we just have that one more building. Let's do it. So we went over to the science building. And here's Dr. Jones is in there, and we're in the chemistry building. And I said, hey, Dr. Jones, good to see you again. Hey, how'd it go with doing your back storage of chemicals? He said, great, come on in. So we walked in there. Now, because of what I had learned in that seminar training thing that I told you about, I had always kind of asked every chemistry teacher, hey, you don't happen to have any picric acid, do you? And they always said, no, we don't have any of that. Can you check and make sure? Nope, we don't have any. Great. So I said, do you have any picric acid, Dr. Jones? You just had this whole thing organized. It looks great. You've got an inventory right here. Did you find that you had any picric acid? He said, nobody uses that stuff anymore. I said, I know. But why don't you check your inventory and see if you have some? Well, guess what? He says, I got 3 bottles. And I was like, you said what? And he said, I got 3 bottles. And with that, he bends over and he pulls out a gallon jug and he starts to hand it to me. And this thing is all milky white inside and crystallized on the outside. And I freaked out. I said, oh, put it down. The guy next to me, the facilities manager, he was kind of a friend. He says to me later on, he says, Randy, I never saw anybody turn white that fast. He said, you look like my white t-shirt. And I said, well, gosh, this stuff is scary. So then he put it down, and I said, where's the other ones? And he points to them, and I go, don't get them, just leave them there. Don't touch anything. Are there any classes here tonight? No. Is this a secure building? Yes, and security is around. I said, don't let anybody in here until I talk to you tomorrow. We don't have any classes until tomorrow afternoon. Nobody comes in here. Absolutely. I got to figure out what you're supposed to do. I don't know if you can just dispose of it or how we're supposed to dispose of it. Nobody's ever said yes to me before. So I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. I thought, what if a student goes in there? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought I should have just called the hazmat team. Why didn't I do that? So I couldn't sleep. 4 o'clock, I finally just got out of bed and I drove into the office. I got into the office around 5:30, something like that. And I ran into one of the guys from our hazmat team. We call them health hazmat. These guys are specialists in hazmat. And so I run into this guy and he says, you aren't going to believe what happened to me yesterday. I was at a school inspecting and they have picric acid. And he did the same thing I did. He said, what? Picric acid? And I go, yeah. And he goes, oh, that's not good. And I said, yeah, it's still up there, but I didn't know what to do. And what should I do? He said, have you called your captain? I said, no, I was in the process. Actually, I have tried to call him. I tried to call him this morning on the way in. He's not answering. He says, call your chief. So I called my chief. I told him what the situation was. And he said, I think you need to call it in, call dispatch, have hazmat go over there, have the local engine go over there, and then meet him up there. So I did that. I ran out to the car. I drove up there as fast as I could, but they all got there before me. So I pull up, and it's this building right here on the bottom. And I pull up, and they're all there. And they walk up to me and go, Randy, why did you call us? What is this about? The chemistry teacher over here says it's just an acid. Why did you call us? What's the big deal? So I said, have you looked it up in the ERG, in the Emergency Response Guidebook? They said, no, we haven't yet. So they said, we'll look it up. And it told them to look at Guide 113, fire or explosion. Dried out. Material may explode if exposed to heat, flame, friction, or shock. Then it says, refer to Guide 112, and then it says, evacuate for 1,600 meters, 1 mile or more if it gets on fire. And so the long and short of it was they called the bomb squad. Bomb squad, they called them up and they said, hey, we have some picric acid. And the guy said, oh, no, picric acid. Oh, man, I hate dealing with that stuff. So they all showed up. Took a long time for them to get there. Long story short, bomb squad comes. They get the guy in the Oompa Loompa suit. And he goes in there and he gets the picric acid and he takes it out. And what they had decided to do, they had some of our guys go out in a field. There was a field out behind the school. The school's kind of in a little bit of a rural part of Santa Clarita. And they dug a hole, and the hole was about 1 foot by 1 foot, maybe at the most 2 foot. It was about a foot deep, maybe at the most 2 feet. It was just kind of in between, and it was a circle. And they just take a couple of shovels, dug it out, one by one, maybe 1 by 2. And what they did is they put some diesel fuel in it. Then they put some a blasting cap in. Now, a blasting cap, when it goes off, it's like a big firecracker, like an M80. So they put that in there, and a little bit of paper, too. Then the Oompa Loompa suit guy, he goes and he takes them one at a time, and he very carefully, because, I mean, you bump that stuff, it would explode. Very carefully puts it in the hole. Now, the concept was the blasting cap is going to make the glass break, the diesel fuel ignite with some of the paper, and we would get a big fireball and it would burn up the acid. And it would give us maybe a little bit of an explosion. Like I said, maybe, an M80 or a little bit better, at the most, quarter stick of dynamite. And that was the plan. and it would just, we'd have a big fireball and it's all gone. Then the school has to clean up the dirt. Well, that isn't what happened. It exploded, and it exploded big time. So I don't think I can do this, but this is a video. Let me click on it, see if it works. Nope. So I'm going to put these videos, and I'm going to put the regular version of this PowerPoint on a page that this video is on. And you can watch this video and the next one and see that what happened was a huge explosion. This was a very large amount of picric acid, this explosion. But this was an incident where they found some this big at a school, and you'll see the video of that explosion. Not that big of a deal. Both of the explosions you're going to see were much smaller amounts. We had over a gallon. So the end result was they called out fire in the hole, and they hit that thing, and we were all they said, I think you guys should, just in case, all go behind buildings, go behind the fire engines. And it was boom, shakalaka-laka. It shook the buildings. Car alarms were going off all throughout the canyon. The girls' basketball team thought it was an earthquake, and they all came running out of the gym screaming. People were calling LA County Fire Dispatch saying, there's been an explosion, I think it's terrorists, all of this kind of stuff. Well, that 1x1 hole, it became a 6-foot crater. And all of these guys that were saying, Randy, what'd you call us for? Were all walking up to me going, dude, good call. And I did get recognized a little bit for preventing a big disaster. But can you imagine if some student opened that thing? So I asked the head of the bomb squad, and I'm sorry this was way longer than it should have been, but I asked the head of the bomb squad, if that had gone off inside that chemistry backstock with all of the other stuff that's in there, what do you think would have happened? And he goes, that's unestimable. He goes, there's no way to know the kind of chain reaction that it would have caused. But I'll guarantee you this, that building would have been rubble. And it's a concrete block building. He said, absolutely no doubt about it. That building would have been all the way to the ground. So, a little prevention, a little investigation. If you're watching this because you're in my hazmat class, we use the ERG, we use our research materials, we use our own knowledge and our training to figure things out. When you're doing an inspection, that chain door that you say, hey, you can't have that chain, you got to take that chain off there, might save a firefighter's life that night if there was a fire there. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen next. So when you make sure that exits are clear, when you make sure that hazardous materials are stored properly, when you do all of these things, you might be saving a life. Okay, and that's all for now. Watch the videos. I'll put them on the same page as this lecture. Sorry it was too long. Bye.